Hello everybody. Last week I talked about Final Fantasy 15, so today I'm doing a review for Final Fantasy 7 Remake. So a couple things here before we get started. The only other Final Fantasy game I've played is 15, so if I make any comparisons it'll be to that. Now I've not played the original 7, although I know there are some key differences in the story, especially towards the end. There will be some minor spoilers throughout this review, nothing major though. And I don't think it should be a problem, but I will also have a spoiler section at the end for major problems. Or not major problems, major spoilers. The console I played this on is a base PS4, so anytime I'm talking about performance, that's base PS4. Um, and I listened to the dub and not the sub for voice acting. So with that in mind, let's get started. And first I would like to talk about the graphics of the game and some technical aspects. Um, it was very graphically inconsistent. So the faces and character animations, and especially the facial animations, were ridiculously good. Like, graphics wise, chances are if it was a character thing, it was really good. It was genuinely to the point where it's like the character models and animations at this, it's just like a movie. Like, it genuinely hardly seems like a video game anymore. It's just ridiculous. Like, I thought 15 was good. This was just wow. Like in the in-game cutscenes where I was using the character models, like the facial expressions and changes they made, like it just looked so real. It was really, really good. Um, so why am I saying it's inconsistent then? Um, they there's a lot of pop in, like a lot of pop in, like more than I have seen in any other game ever, like to just a ridiculous extent. Like the only pop in that I've seen more or to the same as this has been in those like compilations of shitty launch Cyberpunk 2077 stuff, where like that's how bad it is. Now, granted, I was able to eventually move past that, and it was really distracting me early on. It was very distracting, but I was able to move past that and enjoy the game despite that. So it's not like, unovercomable or anything. And it did seem like it was worse towards the beginning sections, and it got better throughout the game, but it was still really annoying. The other thing I've heard is that it's a software issue. It's not a hardware issue, so it's not a PS4 thing. Like if you play this game on the PS4 Pro, it has the same issues. So it's not that the PS4 is not powerful enough. I haven't heard about the PS5, so I'm not sure. The SSD could reduce that, but I'm really not sure. But yeah, on the Pro, it's still not great. The environments in general were really hit or miss. Like the characters were just great, period, all across the board. The environments were kind of hit or miss. Like all of the towns on the underside of the big plate, they just look kind of samey and boring, and that's where all the poppin' was. And it was just brown, and like it was kind of cool, I guess, but like for me that was not great. The exception there, and actually one of I think the best looking areas in the entire game was Wall Market. The nighttime setting really helped it out. There was bright, vivid neon colors everywhere, which I've heard is different from the original Final Fantasy VII, and that is much more of another regular town. All of the environments, like inside Wall Market, the places inside Wall Market were really cool. It felt like a living, breathing place, and the graphics really contributed to that, and the art style as well. Um, I think that goes to show really that like this game could have looked a lot better if it had been more stylish or had a more unique art style in some areas. It had a really unique art style in a lot, but again, it was pretty hit or miss. Um, for performance, not a ton to say there. It runs at 30 FPS, but it's like a rock solid 30 FPS. I found there was maybe a couple drops, but hardly anything. And honestly, it even felt a little bit higher than 30 FPS. I don't think it actually was, but it felt like that. Like it felt like 45, even though I'm sure it was not. Um, One thing that I thought was really cool is the lack of loading screens. One thing about FF15 is that you have to fast travel a lot, unless you want to use the car, but that's another long waiting time. And if you don't want to use the car, you have to fast travel a lot. The loading screens were not bad, but that's because I was playing it on the next-gen console. Apparently, on the Xbox One, PS4, it was really bad. Here, the loading screens were kind of long, I guess, but there was so few of them. Like, obviously, when you die, there's a loading screen. When you save, there's a loading screen. But other than that, there was probably like 20 throughout the whole game. Um, so it was really good on that front, I thought. And I was worried about coming from this next gen console to the base PS4. Like in general with this game, I was worried about coming from a next gen console to a base PS4 and just being disappointed having gotten used to the next gen performance. But it really wasn't too bad. I didn't notice too much. The only thing was the pop in. Um, other than that, it did not feel like I was stepping back a console generation, which is good. Gameplay. Gameplay is where I think there was the biggest improvement over Final Fantasy 15. I loved Final Fantasy 15. I did not like the gameplay in Final Fantasy 15. It felt like what Final Fantasy 15 was trying to be almost. So how it works is you have just basic attacks, and you hit with a basic attack that does some damage, not too much though, and that fills up a bar, and this happens for all the characters. And you only control one character, but the bar slowly fills up for everybody as they're attacking, and the AI control them. You can switch, by the way, which is also really nice. And once that bar fills up, you have special abilities that you can use, or items that you can use that cost a certain number of bar points. Mostly it was just one bar stuff cost, but there's a couple things that cost two, I noticed. I really like that a lot more than 15 because in 15 it was just each character had their one special attack, and I guess you could change it in the upgrade system, but like you only ever had the option of one attack in battle per character. Here, the characters can have any number, not any number, but a couple of different options. They can use items as well. That's the other thing about 15. I just potion spammed in 15 and just brute force my way through the game. You can't do this here because a potion is an item and requires a slot or a bar to use. So it felt much more strategic. And it felt much more strategic determining which move that I was going to use. Again, in 15, it was just use the move when you have the bar, but here it was, what move do you want to use and when? Do you want to try to get some damage? Do you want to try to heal? Summon abilities? All that sort of stuff. So this really felt like what 15 was trying to be. I loved it. There's an early boss called the Airbuster, which I know is a thing in the original 7 as well, and it's a thing here. The Airbuster for me was where it really clicked. The music is great in this game. Just a quick side note, I'm not going to talk a ton about the music just because I'm not really qualified. All I can say is it was really ridiculously good, like one of the best soundtracks in a game I've ever heard. But if you ask me to talk about why and give a critical analysis, I cannot do that. I can just say it's good. Side note over. But yeah, the Airbuster fight, the music was coming together, the strategy was coming together. The combat felt both intense and strategic at the same time. Really loved it. That was the fight for me where it all came together. It generally felt pretty balanced as well. Like, none of the characters ever felt super weak, and none of the, felt like there was balance. The abilities were pretty balanced. There was builds that you could work out, and you could get some balanced builds. Maybe you could break the game, but I was not skilled enough to do so. Haste, the only thing was haste felt really good. Like, if you're not running one character with haste, you're doing something wrong. That just felt like easily the best thing in the game. But other than that, it was really balanced. And even with haste, I just liked haste, so I didn't mind it being as powerful as it was. I like the MP bar. That's the other difference between Final Fantasy 15 and this. Is that, like, your magic? Well, A, only one character, Noctis, had magic. B, it regenerated over time. And C, there was very little you could do with that. Here you have MP, and spells cost MP and require a slot. That felt very strategic too, using smaller or bigger spells. Stuff has weakness to certain elements of spells, so that's another element of strategy. It just felt very strategic. Not like a strategy game strategic or anything, but it felt a lot more strategic than 15 or even just a regular RPG. Yeah. Get on the next page of my notes here. I came prepared. There was a bit of a difficulty spike towards the end, I noticed, but it never felt... It was always doable. Like, I had to There's a couple stuff. I play the normal mode, by the way. There was a couple bosses that I struggled on, but eventually I got through, and it felt doable. It felt challenging, but challenging in a good way. Like it felt fair. I enjoyed that. There was a couple. It was like a little. The spike was maybe a little too high, but not a big problem. I like the weapon upgrade system, where you don't get new weapons very often, and any weapon you have can be viable throughout the entire game, and each weapon can give you like different upgrades to your character and stuff. I really enjoyed that. I used the base weapon for Cloud, the Buster Sword, throughout the whole game. I switched weapons on my other characters a little bit. But I like that system a lot. It makes you spend a lot of time in the menu with it, but like it's a good enough system that it felt worth it, and it like earned its time commitment from you. Um, Once again, it felt pretty strategic. Like you would choose between getting more health, more MP, more attack, uh, more elemental damage for your spells, stuff like that. And that's the case for all of them. The one thing is, all of the characters' different weapons felt a little too similar. And then also you put in materia that give you further upgrades. Generally, materia will give you spells or stat boosts. So yeah, I overall I really enjoyed the weapon upgrade system though. Um, the game does kind of reward builds, but they're pretty easy to pull off, like basic builds. I don't have a ton to say about that because I didn't ever go really in depth with that, but yeah, you can get some good builds out there. The motorbike minigame activity that they make you do, that's miserable and I hated it. Especially there's a boss towards the end that just isn't fun. It takes a long time. I died like twice on it. I wasted so much time. It was just boring. Ugh. Did not like again, not like a huge deal breaker or anything because it's not a ton of time in the game, but I don't know. It just kind of felt like filler. Like it didn't really need to be there, or if it was there, it could have been shortened. Um, I enjoyed, as I mentioned earlier, you can switch characters in combat. I enjoyed being able to switch characters, especially when different bosses like had different types of bosses. I usually switched if I was going to switch to Barrett a lot because I found Barrett. I liked his range, or Tifa if I wanted to get. Sorry, not Tifa, Aerith. Because her attack isn't that great, but she has really good spells, and the character you're controlling, their bar usually fills up the fastest because you're controlling them, and so you can use their spells the most. So her basic attack isn't the best, but you get her spells a lot faster, and her spells are really good. Barrett I just liked because he had range, so if I was struggling with a boss playing Cloud, then like I just switched to Barrett and take it down from range. The only character that felt a little bit redundant was Tifa, because she is also close range damage like Cloud is, so it felt like, why would I use Tifa? Like, Cloud already has that thing, so like, she didn't feel like she had necessarily in the gameplay like her own niche that I needed to use her. There's one mission where it forces you to play as like different characters or like gives you smaller options, and so that I played as Tifa there. And like she feels good when you do play her, but I feel like the game does not give you enough of a reason to play her. Um, so yeah, but I still overall really liked that. So the story and the voice acting now. Um, the voice acting was really good. The dub was good. With anime or Japanese stuff in general, I usually do sub because I find the dub tends to be sometimes. But with this game, I looked it up before going into it, and it said the dub is good. And so I played with the dub for a bit, switched to the sub for about an hour, and then back to the dub for the rest of the game. I do think the dub is actually not only good, but better than the sub, which is not super common. It didn't sound like unnatural or like there's kind of like an anime voice that exists that I've heard from watching the podcast of a voice actor comes around because of the constraints of having to voice act when the animations are already in place. And so that kind of creates like the anime voice, which is I don't like very much, and I know a lot of people don't like too much. That voice wasn't really here. It felt pretty natural. It felt good. There's some things like, for example, the animations are hooked up to the Japanese voices and not the English ones. So sometimes like somebody will point like right after they should have or something, and it's a little weird. But like you probably wouldn't have even noticed it if I didn't point it out to you. So sorry about that. The reason I picked it over the Japanese was just because I really liked the voice actors for Cloud and Barrett. Um, Cloud in the sub just kind of sounded like generic anime protagonist number 12, and Barrett just sounded like generic anime tough guy number 11 or whatever. But with the dub, I thought Barrett and Cloud had much better, more unique voices that I really did enjoy with them. The other voice actors were still good as well, but I felt Barrett and Cloud were really the standouts there. Excuse me. I also looked it up. The voice actor for Cloud was Cody Christian, who was apparently in like Teen Wolf and stuff. Was not expecting that in FF7, but he did a great job. Um, the I really liked. This is less for the voice acting and more for the story now. I really enjoyed actually. So the expanded runtime, I think this section was only like 5 hours in the original, and it was stretched out into a 30-hour game, and they filled that with a lot of stuff, and a lot of it was boring filler, but a lot of it was these like cute, quirky, fun character moments. And I felt like I got to know the characters a lot better than. Keep in mind, I haven't played the original, but it felt like I got to know them a lot better than I may have if I just played the original in this section. I really liked that. The good voice acting lended more to that as well. Um, I liked all the relationships that developed between the characters. I liked the character journeys. The love triangle felt a little overdone, maybe. Like, there was some nice moments there, but it definitely felt a little overdone. But not to the point where it, like, ruined anything or distracted away from the main story too much. I grew to really like the main cast by the end. They were just likable characters. I liked their journey together. I liked them when they split up the characters, so you're not with all four party members at the same time. Like, it'll split them up every now and again. A couple will go off here and you'll play with them, and so that was cool. It allowed characters individually to have moments with each other outside of the party. Um, my biggest issue really was the filler. There was a bit of story filler. Um, they like, and that's honestly one of my biggest issues with the game. I feel like they could have, like, this was a 30-hour game for me. I feel like they could have cut 10 hours out and it just would have been better. Um, it's still, but yeah, it just felt like there was a lot of filler. I enjoyed all of the different character journeys. Get to the next page here. So, now I said I was going to have a spoiler section at the end, but before that, I want to do a little bit of a conclusion for the people who do not want to have it spoiled. If you enjoy story-based RPGs, you'll probably enjoy this. I feel like I've said a lot of critical things about it in this review. Overall, still excellent. I liked it a lot. It's a worthwhile buy. It goes on sale now for usually. I got mine for $30 like 2 weeks ago or something. You can probably find it for $30 pretty consistently. It's worth it for that price and below. It's probably worth 60, but why pay 60 when it goes on sale for 30 pretty often? In the future, it'll be cheaper if you're watching this review in like, a couple months or something. This is only the first one in a series, so as I mentioned earlier, there's more Final Fantasy VII Remake coming. I'm looking forward to the next entry. The one thing I will say about this is it didn't feel like it had as much of a conclusion as 15. Like, 15 had a really good conclusion. This didn't have as much of one, which is to be expected of the first entry in a series, but I just thought I'd point it out. It made me really excited for the next entry. I'm sad that my next gen console is a Series X because the next entry will probably be a year exclusive on the PlayStation, so I'll have to wait extra long for that, but, then what'll be coming next for me? For reviews, I did 15 last week and 7 this week. I started playing Yakuza Like a Dragon, but it sort of fell off a little bit just because I've been having a lot of school stuff. I might actually do Cowboy Bebop. I know it's not a video game, but I started watching it and I've really been enjoying it. So next might be Cowboy Bebop, might be Like a Dragon, might be something else. Spoiler section time. If you don't want anything spoiled, bye-bye. Like and subscribe, please. Thanks for watching. Now that they're all gone, people who are okay with spoilers and have presumably finished the game. All that Destiny stuff was weird, wasn't it? All that like Fate. To my understanding, that was not a thing in the original game. And I remember there was a portal, and so I did. This is before I realized that there were big differences between this and the original, and this is how I realized there were differences. So I have a roommate who's played not the whole original, but he's gotten through this first part. And I talked to him, and he's like, "Oh, how'd you like it? How was the conclusion?" I was like, "Oh yeah, I really liked it. You know, it was kind of funny going through the portal at the end." And he was like, "What?" So I was like, "Oh, I guess that wasn't a thing in the original, was there?" All that Fate stuff was kind of weird, but at the same time, it did lend it a sense of awesomeness, or not awesomeness. What would the right word be? Bigness, importance. Um, Scale. Yeah, I don't know. It lent it some sort of big finale in a game where there wasn't a big finale originally, and I think that's what they were going for. Um, Fighting Sephiroth was really cool. I liked that fight a lot. I really liked that mechanically, and that you start fighting him, and then you get another teammate, and then another teammate, and then another teammate, and then another teammate. Um, and I liked that a lot because it felt like it made you appreciate all your teammates' roles, getting them introduced back one by one. It made you appreciate, and I like that. The dog was weird. The talking dog towards the end that just shows up and becomes a main character. Like, like you go into the Shinra facility and there's just a talking dog, and then he's just part of your crew then. And this is like in the last 5 hours of the game, and he's just now a main character. And I remember thinking about this because before you go into the weird portal, it zooms in on all the main characters' faces, and then it zooms in on the dog. And I remember thinking at that point, wait, he's a main character now? What? But not necessarily a bad thing. I liked him. Like he was cool character who's fun. I look forward to learning more about his past and look forward to going on the adventure with him. Um, I like the scene of I think that was Sephiroth rescuing Cloud, like with the black hair, but it looked like it had Sephiroth's face as like to give some of their backstory. That's interesting. That was cool. Um, and yeah, I mean, I'm really looking forward to the rest of the series. I don't know if I want to play the original 7 and then, before the rest of the remake comes out. So, I guess if you guys could leave a comment, just, if you've played Final Fantasy 7, what you think I should do, or even if you haven't, should I play the original and then play the remake, or wait for all the remake to come out and then play the original? I'd appreciate that because I'm pretty stuck on that because I want to keep playing the game, but I also, it's not out. Um, but yeah, thank you everybody for watching, like and subscribe. I'll be doing more of this stuff in the future. I know this was a shorter review than FF15. I tried to make this one a little bit more concise, and I have less to say about this as well. 15 felt like a lot more flawed, so I felt like pointing more stuff out. This felt like much more of a tight game, apart from that filler. Um, but again, I appreciate you watching it regardless. Have a great day, everybody. Bye bye.